Okay. I'm trying to balance that.
Is this, oh, it is on. If you have a question, if you'd raise your hand, I will pass the now working mic out.
Oh my golly, thank you so much. I can be trusted with it.
Please raise your hand if
Good
you
answer.
have a question, comment.
It's such a small room. I don't know if you need a mic, but my question is for Anna. Thank you to all the readers. You shared a story about a woman whose life you saved through poetry, and I was wondering if you know how her life was saved and what in it.
Good. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a long story, but because tonight, it's like a few years, 2012, I was asked by World Peace Organization from Vancouver. They want to celebrate Lipo's anniversary. So they asked us to submit poems about Lipo. So I wrote this poem after reading Ted Hughes, right? That poem. And for me, so the library chose that as a gift. So they post on library, they post on the wall at library, and the lady with the depression, she wandered around in the library and she read the poem, then she changed her mind. But for me, I also asked my book editor, Terry Bach, why this poem, right? So we tried to analyze it, but I kind of thinking is the last three lines. Last three lines said, "Moon, lift your bucket, come out once more. I won't make a sound." So these three lines also speak for me because before writing this poem, I was very unhappy. After wrote it, I become happy because for me, I still think there has a lot of beauty in the world, to make me to want to live, want to stay, want to live. Like the nature, the same moon, right? Everyone sees the beauty, and the nature is so just, it's so fair. It shares the beauty to everyone. So that's why when I was in Mississauga Poet Laureate, I designed the project, Haiku Walking Tour project. So I invite people to get together, then we take a walk. Then we write about nature. So we slow down, we see the small details or small beauties from the nature, we write about it. In this way, we feel we live. We feel we live in each moment and fullness. So that's, yeah, I think because that.
Mike?
Thank you. I've been always interested in poetry, and I often wonder how would you define it, and what instruments would you use in order to deliver your message to the world?
So for me or
For him, maybe all three of you could.
Yeah, we all have the music, right, together with the poetry. Okay, you go first. You have the CD, right? You have the CD with the poetry.
Yeah, that's right.
He just wants dance.
I just wanted to have some liberation afoot, as opposed to feeling imprisoned by yet another set of wires. But in any event, music, instrumentation, that goes to the question for me of what poetry is. And poetry is in essence the first instinct for music and song that we have. It's organic, it's in us, it's been in us ever since Neanderthals began to morph into Homo sapiens, either because of God's touch, as in Michelangelo's painting, or because of the gravitas of Darwin's theory. No matter how you look at it, though, human beings are born with an urge towards rhythm, with an interest in cadence, of course, hardwired for language. You put all three of those together, you add the pulse of the blood, the heartbeat, the inhalation and exhalation of the breath, and you have the makings for word music. You have the makings for word opera. You have the makings for the intensely wrought and extremely thought through interest in self-expression, in language that is meant to be both emotional and memorable and inspirational.
Yes, we did a record. We did a record. Okay, for me, at the beginning, I just worry about my accent. So I want to combine all other kind of arts together so people wouldn't avoid my accent. That's my first attention. But then, slowly, I found music with poetry perfect mix together. So now I'm very enjoy. I don't like when I just melt inside. So I feel myself just melt inside. So now I'm not worried too much. But I do when you ask the instrument with poetry. For me, I found sometimes you need to choose very proper music with your poetry. For me, my style maybe is soft, right? It's slow, so I will choose some soft music. So depend. For George, maybe should be sounder. So it's different personality. So how about you?
For myself, I'm not involved in music as much as the two of them as of yet. But many times when I'm writing, the words come after I find the rhythm, right? After I hear the rhythm of the words, or I hear somebody say something, and you can hear that rhythm, that balance, that beat, and that's what picks up the poem. Then I run with that and go with that. I do have some friends turning some of my poems into folk songs, and some of them even into operatic songs. So I'm hoping that does go forward, because I'm really interested to see what they do with it and how that evolves. Music is so closely intertwined with poetry, and if I had to pick an instrument, of course I think it would be the voice. I think that's the strongest instrument to use with poetry. Thank you.
I'm not really sure what my question is right now, but I really enjoyed the passion coming through all three of you around using your poetry as an instrument for social justice. So I'm curious to learn more about that, about the intersection between the poetry and social justice, and maybe how it manifests in other ways in your life.
For me, at the very beginning, I thought my poems is more like a confessional. So I thought my poetry is more just related to myself. But then I found Gwynplaine. She said, a great female poet in Canada. She said, all personal is political. So I said, and now I agree, because of what I talk about my family things or my sister things, it's related to each other. It speaks for other people, especially for my accent. I found so many people related. So, like for example, Polish and Russian, like some hoster, they really feel also it's there, speak to them. So sometimes your own story maybe has broad way, right? Not just relate to yourself.
I believe because I'm a poet or an artist of any kind, that I have a social responsibility to speak out against the things that I feel passionate about, things I hear in the news and otherwise. We have a voice, and we should use it. If you consider it a gift, then you should be using that to make the world a better place. We have a responsibility to leave it better than we found it. So that's what I'm hoping to do with my words whenever I can.
The political is personal. The personal is political. As I was mentioning earlier, reading my poem about Judas and his ideas and his thoughts and so on, those attitudes are also archly political. Everything in history is political. The reason why Canada exists in the way that it does is because of politics, because of the imperialism of the British and French empires and their collisions with indigenous nations, and then also the separation from the United States through revolution from Great Britain and so on. Everything in our reality is political in the end, even though it's often repressed or hidden and it's not polite to talk about it. And sometimes, at least between elections, it's not polite to talk about the fact that who has power, who doesn't, who is oppressed and who isn't, who is the ruling class and who isn't, who are the big capitalists and who are the poor and underprivileged, and to talk about all the issues attached to that in terms of, again, of public spending. Where does money get spent? Who does it get spent on? Why does it get spent? What are the priorities for our society, for government, and so on and so forth? I'm going to read my version of O Canada now, just as a response to the question about music and, of course, the ideas about social justice. And my version of O Canada is a result of a request from a school teacher here in Ontario. And of course, as you all know, the motto of this great province of Ontario is, need I state it? You all know what our motto is for this great province of Ontario. Loyal she remains. You may ask, loyal to whom? I know I don't need to ask you that because you already know who we are loyal to. If we should ever have to rally to the side of Her Majesty to defend her from the Brexit hordes. You never know, we may have to. Anyway, O Canada. And the school teacher who wrote to me asked me to give a different version of it because she finds our official anthem to be sexist, militarist, and anti-indigenous. So there you go. Anyway, so here's my attempt to repair all the harm done for 150 years already by O Canada. Remember, I can't sing, and don't worry, there's if you get the one copy of the CD I have available tonight for only $20, it's sung in an R&B fashion by a Juno Award-winning singer, Shelley Hamilton. So don't worry, you won't have to suffer through my voice. So I won't try and sing it, but you never know, I might end up feeling just a little bit of inspiration, but nobody has to stand. That's the good news. Oh, Canada, true home of liberty, where salmon leap dams and bison range prairie. Our North Star hearts glow at thy rise, true north from sea to sea. From east to west and north to south, we're the world's most neighborly. Native in soul, are rooted in liberty. Oh, Canada, great's thy humanity. Oh, Canada, great's thy humanity. You know I can't hit that note.
I also couldn't sing, so anyway.
So I'm from Halifax too, so very good. I got to work a lot with L. Jones, you know L probably. So tell me a little bit what, excuse my voice, what you think the state of the Poet Laureate is. You're talking a lot about politics, but I think Poet Laureates are sometimes not understood or misunderstood. You all are or were Poet Laureates of major cities in Canada. Tell me what you think, how it's evolving, how the message that you're trying to portray is changing maybe.
We can all answer the question, so I'll let Tom start.
I know for myself, being the Poet Laureate affected me greatly, changed my life and my career, but it also changed my city. I saw the city grow its literature community, in a great way over the last year since we started the initiative. And it's really great to see the culture and the voice of wherever there is a poet laureate start to be heard. You know, we're getting a voice from the north, we're getting a voice from Canada, and we're hearing what people are saying and seeing their lives, and I think that's great. I think young people are getting involved in a big way, especially in poetry, with poetry slams and spoken word poetry. They're finding their voice and they're speaking, they're letting their feelings out and their thoughts, and this is good all around. So I see the whole initiative as a great success, and I'm really happy that it happened, and I hope it continues and keeps pushing forward, because I think it is changing lives.
I also see the changes, especially I always got invitation from schools to doing a workshop for schools. And this made me very happy, because we really want the young generation to be open, to listen, and to care for poetry and care for humanity. So that's what I really wanted to push. And also for education, like sometimes for education side system, for me, I think they are pushing too much about academic side or talk, so they cut the funding for the arts. But for me, I really think arts will open up people, be human. Not academic side or science, it's more like develop your surviving, right, living. But still, so many people get depressed. Why? So we need to ask the question, because we lost our soul in some way, right? We gain something, gain material, but we lost something. So that's why I want our education system think about that, to see what we should do to bring people together, to bring humanity inside us.
Beautiful. And I'll just follow up very quickly by saying that the current Poet Laureate of Halifax, and I'm sorry, I'm not remembering her name, but she was successful because of a poem that she read to Halifax City Council, in having the statue of Edward Cornwallis, the official founder of Halifax, 1749, removed from his downtown perch. And where he was stationed in downtown Halifax is where most of the immigrant ships would have been arriving back in the days of Pier 21 and so on, up until basically the 1960s. So the first statue that many people would have seen in stepping foot onto Canadian soil would have been that of Edward Cornwallis. And the reason why the Poet Laureate spearheaded through her poem the moral effort to have Cornwallis' statue mothballed is because of the fact he was the one who pushed for a law to allow the scalping of Indigenous people. We've all heard of the Hollywood stereotype about Indigenous people scalping the settlers or would-be settlers. But it was the other way around in Nova Scotia, thanks to Cornwallis, but because of the Poet Laureate and her poem, there was public pressure that was put on the City Council. The City Council itself decided that they could no longer celebrate so publicly this person who instituted a provincial, literally provincial form of genocide. And the other thing I'll say very quickly, when I was Poet Laureate of Toronto, I thought from 2012 to 2015, I thought it was important that the Poet Laureate be invited to speak on all moments of public importance and so on. And so I was successful in asking the City Council to ask myself and then subsequent Poets Laureate to come and address City Council at least once a year. And I also thought it was important that I read something for Remembrance Day at the City of Toronto. And in 2014, I approached the city and asked for permission to take part in Remembrance Day ceremonies. And they said, "Niet." I'll use Putin's word, "Niet." And I said, okay. And I asked again a second time later, I think in the summer of 2014. And the city came back again and said, "Niet." No place for a poet on the official program. No place for the city-appointed Poet Laureate on the city program. I then wrote to the Lieutenant Governor of Ontario, and asked her, Elizabeth Dodsworth, if I could take part in Queen's Park ceremonies for Remembrance Day. It's 2014. And I'll remind us all of what happened a few weeks before Remembrance Day. The attack on Parliament Hill, the murder of Corporal Nathan Cirillo, and as a result, when Remembrance Day rolled around, there was a lot more gravitas than usual on that occasion. And that was the high point of my presence as Poet Laureate for the city, although I was actually speaking for the province on that occasion. It was wonderful to present poetry, not my own, but that of Douglas LePan, who was a veteran of World War II, and who wrote a book called McAllister, or Playing in the Dark, which dealt with two of his classmates from the University of Toronto, who were parachuted into occupied France and executed by the Gestapo because they were found out as spies, and so tortured and executed. And so I read Douglas LePan's poetry to represent the gravitas of that moment, and before a very appreciative crowd. And I was also, one last thing about this, I was really happy that I was there as a Poet Laureate with the Premier, with the Lieutenant Governor, and with armed forces officials, proving, I'd like to think, that poetry belongs everywhere in public life, everywhere. Yeah. That's what we do. That's how we roll.
I just want to thank you all for sharing your poetry. This is the first time I've come to a public reading like this, and I don't even really know what a Poet Laureate is. And so, so obviously you are leading some group around, or like leading yourself in terms of poetry, but I don't know what gives you that title, how you got there, and there's obviously only city laureates or the provincial laureates. I don't really get it, so can you elaborate?
Well, it's a hodgepodge system, and we inherited the system from Great Britain, who started the whole idea of having a poet laureate, but they were following the Roman Empire. Because in the great age of imperialism, when Great Britain was the naval superpower, simply the superpower on the planet, they saw the importance of using their literature and poetry as a way of cementing their God-given right to rule the globe. And so, for instance, as I'm still answering your question, the whole idea that we should study English literature formally in university started not in England, but in India. The reason why is because the British wanted to teach the Indians that they deserved to be ruled by the British because the British had superior literature. That's where the whole university study of English comes from, as an adjunct of imperialism. And along with that, so does the whole idea of the Poet Laureate. The idea being that if you're Robert Browning, you're the Poet Laureate. If you're Alfred Lord Tennyson, you're the Poet Laureate. You represent the sum total of human achievement in letters, being British, and you help to convey the supremacy of British culture all over the world. But we have inherited that. Of course, we're not as imperialistic as Great Britain was, and so our use of it is a lot more, I like to say, simply civic-minded, as opposed to going along with conquerors and so on. It started in Canada because of a bill put forward in the Senate in 2000, which became law. Senator Jerry Grafstein and a poet from Sudbury, I think. Roger Nash. Roger Nash, they were the ones responsible for that bill that got the Canadian Poet Laureate system established for the House of Commons, for Parliament. And then various cities and a couple of provinces, Saskatchewan being one, have provincial Poets Laureate, but it's mainly cities, municipalities, regions around the country that have Poets Laureate along with the federal parliament. But I think either a couple of provinces or only one. But I know there's been some discussion of having a Poet Laureate of Ontario, except that the current Neanderthal government, I can say that because I can now be political. I had to be apolitical when I was Poet Laureate National and for Toronto. But now I'm off the hook. I'm unleashed. So I can talk about no good, lousy, dirty, Neanderthal, disgusting provincial government we currently have.
So I was inaugural Poet Laureate of Mississauga. So the selection, so the city will form a selection group, and the selection group, I know one leader from library, one leader from art council, like art council, so one leader from youth, so 5 persons together. Then they have the score system, then the open call for submission, then they use the score system to see who is, so I'm lucky I was chosen, okay.
Yeah, basically the same, that there was a panel of judges from the